Hey guys, tonight we travel to a world of icy winds, flickering firelight, and blood-drenched oaths carved into flesh and spirit alike. You find yourself aboard a creaking longship slicing through the cold, black sea. The stars shimmer above, but the men around you are too busy sharpening axes and muttering incantations to notice. These aren't just warriors, they're Viking raiders. And what they're about to do isn't just battle, it's ritual, it's sacred, and it's terrifyingly sexual in ways no modern code of honor could explain. You see, to raid was to seduce the gods, to dominate, to spill blood, to conquer bodies both living and dead. Rites of fertility and death blended together. There's a reason priests warned villagers to flee before the sails hit the horizon. Because when these men landed, they weren't just coming for gold, they were coming for you. And you probably wouldn't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the edge of a fjord. The salty air bites at your skin, and somewhere in the mist, a horn bellows. You flinch, not from fear exactly, but from the way your blood stirs. Something ancient hums beneath your feet, a beat older than civilization, a rhythm you recognize even if you don't understand it. These are the sounds of a people who lived with the sea as their cradle and the sword as their inheritance. The Vikings weren't just pirates. They were part of an ecosystem of terror ritual and sacred masculinity that braided violence with sex, often indistinguishably. At the heart of their world was a strange blend of fear and desire. Picture it, a chieftain's hall glowing with torchlight. Bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder on benches slick with mead. A skald, an oral poet, chants the exploits of a man who once plunged his spear into a Saxon warlord, and moments later his tongue into the warlord's grieving widow. No one flinches. No one gasps. It's not a scandal. It's glory. This wasn't tabloid drama. This was theology. The Viking gods demanded action. Odin the All-Father sacrificed himself on a tree for wisdom stabbed through the heart. Freyja, the goddess of fertility and war, took lovers from both the living and the dead. Sex and battle were offerings, expressions of power. And for the raiders who bore their symbols on carved bone and blackened iron, copying the gods meant embracing all aspects of their chaos. You begin to realize nothing was casual. Not the touch of a woman, not the touch of a man, not even the way blood soaked into soil. Everything had a cost. And everything sacred was also a little dangerous. You step into the hall following the scent of pine smoke and sweat. A woman with braided hair and iron rings in her ears glances at you. Her eyes are sharp and she's not smiling. These were not meek maidens. Viking women could own land, initiate divorce, and in some cases fight. But in matters of ritual, especially the erotic ones, their role could shift unpredictably. One night they might be priestesses leading sacred fertility rites. The next, captives used as living vessels for the gods' pleasure or wrath. It all depended on who held the knife. And oh, there were knives. Sacred ones. You hear murmurs of a blot, a blood sacrifice to honor Odin before a raid. The ritual begins with animals, sure, but not always. Some ceremonies, whispered in legend, used human offerings, sometimes volunteers, sometimes slaves, and in the twisted logic of Viking belief, to die this way could be a blessing. If the gods noticed you, it meant you mattered. If they took your body, it meant you were part of the cycle, even if it meant being desecrated. In the flicker of firelight, a group of men strips down to their waists, their skin painted with red spirals and the runes of Tyr, god of war. Their leader steps forward not with a sword, but with a leather whip adorned with animal bone and silver studs. You watch in eerie fascination as one of the younger warriors kneels before him, back-bowed, eyes shut tight. No one laughs. No one jeers. This is an offering. Pain, endurance, submission, they're tests of worth, but also signals to the gods, to each other. What's shocking isn't just the violence, but the erotic undertone. The gasps, the tremors, the intimacy of skin against skin. This isn't punishment. It's ecstasy, half spiritual, half carnal. The Vikings didn't have your categories. To them, domination was divine. Penetration, whether in battle or ritual, was an assertion of fate. You don't know whether to look away or lean in. They believed in fate. Not the soft, romantic destiny you daydream about, but a snarling beast called the Norns who spun your life into thread and cut it without warning, which meant every moment mattered. Every act could be the one the gods remembered. So if you were going to love to fight to die, it had better be spectacular. And if your rituals didn't leave the village whispering or the dead moaning, then maybe you hadn't done them right. Outside in the sacred grove, another ceremony begins. You follow silent barefoot on frost-bitten soil. A woman lies in the center of a ring of stones, her arms splayed, her gown damp from the dew. Around her men chant in Old Norse. You don't speak the language, but the rhythm tells you what it is: a fertility rite. Meant to awaken the soil, meant to bless a good harvest. But it's more than that. The woman doesn't cry out. Her eyes are open wide. She isn't a victim. She's a medium. She's become the land itself. What happens next isn't about lust. It's about invoking gods through the most primal human act imaginable. One by one, they step forward. There is no shame, no coyness. This is public, communal. You're watching religion, not pornography, and yet your body reacts anyway, confused by the layers of fear, awe, and raw physicality. The difference between worship and violation dissolves in front of you, and this is just the beginning. Back in the village, the women prepare bundles of herbs soaked in sweat and blood, believed to draw spirits into the body during trance states. Those selected to enter the state of Seider spiritual possession often did so through intense, invasive acts. You hear one tale about a man who lay beneath a bear pelt, while others recited incantations and rubbed animal fat across his body. He awoke hours later wild-eyed, claiming Freyja had spoken to him through the lips of a man who kissed him as he burned. No one questioned it, because the line between sex, pain, spirit, and myth didn't exist. It was a braid, like the ones in the warrior's hair. Like the ropes used in binding ceremonies, where couples, sometimes strangers, were tied wrist to wrist, then told to satisfy the gods under a sky of burning stars. You feel the weight of centuries pressing in. This is not a fantasy. This is not a safe reenactment. This was real. And to the Vikings, this was sacred. And the raid hasn't even begun. The longship glides through the midnight water, its carved dragon head gleaming beneath the moon, like a silent warning to any soul watching from shore. You're crouched near the prow, heart pounding not from fear, but from the reverberating sense that something irreversible is about to begin. The warriors around you are silent, except for one who softly hums an old song. It's not joyful. It's the kind of melody meant to stir something older than memory, something deeper than language. This is no ordinary raid. It's not even about gold or cattle. It's a ritual. And you're about to witness what it meant when Viking raiders gave their gods not just blood, but bodies. As the ship draws near land, the men strip off what little cloth they wore during the voyage. They smear ash and boar fat across their skin, transforming themselves into something neither fully man nor beast. This isn't vanity, it's invocation. They believe the gods of chaos favor transformation, and nothing transforms like war. The final rite before the raid is one of bonding. But not the kind you're thinking of. This isn't a pep talk around a campfire. This is a ceremony of flesh. You see two men step into the circle carved into the sand. Both warriors, both lovers. But even that word doesn't capture the truth. Love in this world isn't gentle. It's a tangle of dominance and submission, loyalty and blood-sworn pacts. They don't kiss, they fight, biting, scratching until one yields. Only then, when the pecking order is clear, do they engage in something else raw, sacred, and binding. The others watch not in embarrassment, but in approval. This is their offering to Thor the Thunderer. Let the storm god see their fire. Let him bless their rage. It's not the act itself that matters. It's the power it expresses. The Vikings believed the gods watched closely, not for morality, but for strength. And pleasure, real or feigned, could be power if wielded right. The same act that might shame a man in a Christian monastery was on these beaches a declaration: I conquer you, I break you, I honor you. And here's the twist: those roles could shift. A chieftain might allow himself to be taken, but only as part of a ritual that symbolized death and rebirth. To submit wasn't always humiliation. Sometimes it meant channeling something divine. It meant embodying Loki, the trickster, who changed shape, gender, and role to disturb the balance of fate itself. You begin to realize that in this world, there were no easy labels, no straight lines, only circles, spirals, knots tied around fire and fear. Once the rites on shore are complete, the village ahead becomes the stage. But this isn't random slaughter. No, even the raid follows a spiritual rhythm. The first man to fall must be someone of significance, a gift kill to Odin. It's believed that if the gods are satisfied early, the rest of the raid will be blessed. And so the warriors stalk quietly through the outer fields, seeking the elder, the priest, or the most beautiful woman. Yes, beauty matters, because in Viking lore, beauty was both a blessing and a curse. To be beautiful meant you were marked, desired, claimed. You follow as one of the raiders drags a girl by the hair from a barn. Her clothes are plain, but her eyes burn like fire. She bites scratches. The men laugh not cruelly, but reverently. This is a sign they believe. Her defiance proves she's the right choice. The gods want resistance. They want struggle. She's taken not just as a spoil of war, but as a vessel. And what happens next is unspeakable by modern standards. But not here. Here it is ceremony. She is tied between two poles, not for torture, but for exposure. She is to be seen, to be praised, to be entered not just by the men, but by the god they invoke. A priestess anoints her thighs with oil infused with sacred herbs. The warriors chant. The act is drawn out. There is moaning, crying, shaking. No one rushes. This isn't lust. This is sacrifice. But here's where it becomes more complicated. Some of these women, according to later stories, were not just victims. They were later revered. Some became seeresses, others wives, still others mothers of half-god sons, children, believed to be touched by the divine through their violent conception. You can't categorize this as simply cruelty. It is horror, yes, but also myth. Their entire worldview fed on this duality. Pain births power, births. Pleasure can sanctify death. Meanwhile, in the aftermath of the village's fall, another set of rites begins. In the ruins of the church, if the settlement has one, the Vikings mock the Christian God not by words, but by action. They defile the altar sometimes through orgies, sometimes through rituals meant to mirror communion. But theirs isn't bread and wine. It's sweat, blood, and semen, a new offering to old gods. In one tale preserved through oral legend, a Viking chieftain forced the local priest to watch as he was pleasured by 3 women atop the altar. But the twist, the priest was then made to do the same before being sacrificed. Body painted in runes, eyes wide from whatever herb he'd been forced to ingest. The Vikings believed humiliation was itself a portal. It stripped identity. It broke down barriers. And when you were broken, you were most open to the gods. Elsewhere you see boys no older than 13 being brought into manhood through brutal rites. One must wrestle his father in the mud. Another is blindfolded and kissed by an elder, then taken into the woods for a ritual that leaves him bleeding and sobbing beneath the moon. This is how they learn. Not through books, but through flesh, through fear, through rites that bind the body to memory so deeply it becomes identity. As night falls, the village burns. The women are separated, some claimed as wives, others as concubines, and still others as living offerings. The lines blur. One woman, once defiant, now sits beside a raider who feeds her honey with his fingers. She doesn't resist. Her eyes are distant, lost. You wonder if it's surrender or transformation. Even the dead have a role to play. Viking warriors sometimes arranged the bodies of the fallen into symbolic shapes, a woman's legs spread in a circle of stones. A man posed with a sword thrust between his thighs pointing upward. These were more than morbid jokes. They were prayers. They were warnings. They were art. And then there are the graves. You stumble upon one being prepared. A ship burial. The body of a chieftain lies on fine cloth surrounded by weapons, animals, and slaves. 2 women still alive sit beside him brushing his hair. They smile serenely, already drugged, knowing they'll be strangled before dawn. But not before they accompany their lord into the next world in every way the living body can. It is said that one of these women will be honored after her final cries, after her trembling limbs go still as a goddess herself. She will join Freyja's choir of death maidens, and her soul, cleansed by pain and desire, will guide warriors through the afterlife. You shiver. Not from the cold, but from the inescapable realization that in this world every act, no matter how terrifying, was layered with meaning. Sex was never just sex. Death was never just death. Everything was performance, sacrifice, story, myth. And you are now part of it, whether you want to be or not. Because the raid may be over, but the journey into the Viking psyche has only just begun. You awaken in the smoke-thick morning, your throat dry, your limbs sore. The village is hushed, but it isn't peace, it's the kind of quiet that follows carnage, the kind that settles over scorched rooftops and ash-covered fields like a ghost, too tired to scream. The Vikings do not mourn. Mourning is for the weak. What they do now is honor, and they do it with ritual. You follow the warriors to the river, where the bodies of both friend and foe are stacked. The air smells of blood pine and the copper tang of death. But there is no weeping. Instead, the dead are stripped their flesh, inspected for signs, cuts that resemble runes, bruises that look like omens. One body, a young woman, is lifted and carried to a circle of stones. She died screaming. And that they believe means her soul left strong. That's what the gods crave. But before the pyres are lit, the raiders turn their attention inward. The berserkers, those terrifying warriors who fought in trances of madness, must be cleansed. You're led into the woods where the forest darkens and a sacred space opens beneath a canopy of ancient trees. The berserkers sit naked on damp moss, eyes wide twitching. They've come down from their fury, but they're not whole. Not yet. And here in this silence begins the healing rite. The Saidkona enters, a woman dressed in a cloak of raven feathers, her face painted in charcoal swirls. Her power isn't questioned. She commands attention the way thunder claims the sky. She circles the berserkers, whispering, moaning in a language that slithers over your skin. Then comes the touch. Her hands explore each man's chest, thighs, and belly, not sexually, but sacramentally. She seeks the places where fear lives, where rage hides, where the gods left their fingerprints. Then the oil. She pours it slowly over their genitals, over their hearts, down their spines. The mixture is spiked with herbs that make them shiver and sweat. And when they tremble hard enough, when their breathing falters, when their eyes close from the intensity, she enters the final phase, possession. It doesn't look how you'd expect. She climbs onto one warrior, pressing her lips to his forehead, then down his body. She whispers into his mouth, her breath sweet and sour, with fermented berries. Suddenly he gasps. His hands claw at the soil. He moans, not in ecstasy, but in agony. He begins to speak, but it isn't his voice. It's high-pitched, raspy, guttural. The others fall silent. Odin is speaking. The Saidkona rocks in time with the man's convulsions guiding him through the trance. She speaks to him as if to a lover, as if to a god, asking what the next raid should bring, where the rivers will flood, what villages are ripe for the taking, and the voice no longer his answers, with riddles, warnings, and praise. When it ends, he collapses. He weeps. She kisses his brow. This is how they find meaning in madness. This is how they make war holy. You can't look away. Later, you walk the wreckage of the village again. There's a woman tied to a post in the square. Her hair has been combed, flowers woven into the strands. Around her feet, animal bones, burned feathers, fragments of crushed berries. You hear whispers that she's being prepared not for marriage, not for execution, but for embodiment. She is to become Freyja for one night, not symbolically, literally. A chosen few will approach her at sunset, each one speaking prayers between her toes, her thighs, her breasts. And she will remain silent, still, her gaze fixed to the sky. The idea is not to pleasure her, nor to dominate. The goal is to draw the goddess into her flesh through reverent contact. The belief is that if Freyja descends, she'll bless the men with visions, with strength, with future sons. It sounds like myth, but you see it happen. As night falls, they gather whispering her name like a hymn. One man cups her face. Another weeps as he touches her shoulder. The third trembles before her, placing his hand over her womb. Then, without command, they lie beside her. Not thrusting, not groaning, just touching. Rhythmically, like a heartbeat. A pulse shared between earth, sky, and skin. And in the middle of this strange communion, something changes. The wind stops. Her eyes close. Her mouth opens, but no sound emerges. Only breath. And all around, the warriors drop to their knees. You don't know what you're seeing. You only know it's sacred. Come morning, she's gone. No one speaks of it. Her name is never mentioned again. Some say she walks with the gods now. Others say she returned to her village and birthed children with silver eyes. You'll never know. You're not meant to. That's the thing with Viking rites. They're not made for witnesses. Only for believers. As the days pass, the warriors prepare for departure. But not before honoring their own desires. The captives are given choices, but they're illusions. Choose your man, they're told, or let the gods choose for you. Some laugh bitterly, others weep. A few step forward with fierce eyes, choosing the biggest, roughest men in the hope that boldness might win them favor. And in a strange way, it often does. You hear stories around the fire of women who seduced their captors so completely they became queens. One such woman, Dagny, was said to have bathed her Viking lover in goat's milk while singing charms that made his sword strike true in every battle. Another Iselda bore twin daughters and claimed they were Odin's. When the girls grew up, they led their own raids. This blend of violence and ascendance, it's hard to accept, harder to understand. And yet you see it play out again and again. From the shadows of burning churches to the soft moss floors of sacred woods, the Vikings wove their power through flesh, through ecstasy, through terror. And always the gods were watching. As the longships prepare to leave, a final rite begins. It is called the Binding. A man and a woman, both captives from the raid, are tied back to back. Their hands are bound, their feet entwined. They are given a single knife and told to cut themselves free, but only one can reach it. The one who does will live. The other becomes a message to the gods. You watch the struggle. You watch the cries, the flailing, the moment when one realizes they've lost. And then stillness. The victor doesn't celebrate. They weep. And the others do not cheer. Instead, they hum a song of farewell. Even now, as the sails rise and the sea beckons, the rituals haven't ended. Because Viking belief didn't stay on land. The ocean is sacred. The mist a veil between worlds. And as the ships vanish over the horizon, you realize they've taken more than captives and gold. They've taken souls and left echoes. Echoes in the soil, in the trees, in the trembling breath of those who survive. And you, standing in the stillness, feel changed. Not just because you saw, but because in some haunting way you were seen too. The wind off the fjord picks up again as the longships vanish from the coastline, leaving only charred ruins and breathless silence behind. But the stories, they don't stay buried. The villagers who survived will whisper. The children will ask questions, and the elders will warn them. Don't call it madness. It was ritual. It was the gods walking through men. You linger at the edge of that scorched world, haunted by the eyes you saw, men glazed in trance, women trembling between pain and reverence. And you realize the most terrifying thing about the Viking rituals wasn't the blood. It was the meaning. These were not acts of cruelty without context. They were systems, codes. Each motion, each groan, each scream carried theological weight. And that weight begins early. From childhood, Viking boys were taught the language of dominance, but not just brute force. No, this was psychological, erotic, manipulative. the line between power and intimacy blurred from the start. You imagine a young boy, maybe 10, sitting in the chieftain's hall, eyes wide, as he watches two warriors perform a mock fight that ends in a kiss and a blow to the jaw. Everyone laughs, but the lesson is sharp. Pleasure can be weaponized. Initiation rites reflect this perfectly. Some boys are led into the woods by older warriors, blindfolded, stripped, and left to find their way back. But the return path is laced with obstacles, thorns, traps, and sometimes men hiding in silence, waiting to test their bodies in ways that are never discussed afterward. Not rape exactly, but not consent either. It's not framed as abuse. It's framed as forging. You see one boy return, limping, eyes downcast. The village elder embraces him, not with comfort, but with pride. He has crossed the veil. He is no longer innocent. And in Viking belief, innocence is weakness. The gods don't bless the untouched. They bless the scarred. Even girls weren't spared. Though the emphasis was different, their trials were equally visceral. A young girl might be locked in a hut for 7 days with nothing but the carved idol of Freyja. No food, just herbs and chants. Sometimes an old woman would come in and whisper stories of childbirth, not the beauty of it, but the horror, the tearing, the blood, the screaming. And the message would be simple. You will serve the gods through your pain. Learn to love it. And some did. The women who emerged from this became shield maidens, or priestesses, or more often wives who saw their role not as domestic, but spiritual. To offer their bodies willingly or not was to sustain the balance between chaos and order. To bear children was to bleed for the next generation of raiders. To endure pleasure wrapped in threat was to embody the mysteries of Freyja Skadi, or hell. And some girls chosen by fate or lineage were trained to serve in rites too dangerous for even most warriors to witness. These were the Volur wandering seeresses who walked alone from village to village, dressed in cloaks of dark feathers, bones clinking at their hips. They were feared and revered, not quite witches, not quite priests, something in between. It's said they could summon visions with just a touch, but to do so they required submission from you. You imagine sitting across from one, her eyes black as coal, her fingers trailing across your chest. She doesn't speak. She breathes. She hums. And suddenly your limbs go weak. Your breath catches. And then come the dreams flashes of burning ships, moaning earth, and mouths that whisper your name from the dark. When you awaken, she's gone, but the feeling remains. Like your soul was briefly unstitched and then hastily sewn back together. You learn that some Viking leaders kept Valor close, not just for prophecy, but for pleasure. Sacred, terrifying pleasure. Because when the gods speak through the body, every touch has consequence. A kiss could curse a bloodline. A moan could summon a storm. And no one knew when the spirit speaking through the seeress would be divine or monstrous. You think of the sagas, the old stories passed from mouth to mouth like secrets too dangerous to write down. They speak of raids launched not after political planning, but after sex-fueled visions. A chieftain dreams of ravens between his thighs. His seer tells him it means Odin is hungry. The next morning, 50 men march into war. None return, and yet no one blames the vision. They say the gods needed them more. It makes you wonder how many battles in history were not started in courtrooms or councils, but in bedrooms, on fur-covered floors in the middle of sacred acts that blurred pleasure and prophecy. You walk now through a Viking burial mound, recently opened for mourning. The scent of smoke is still fresh. Inside, two bodies lie entwined not in violence, but in what looks like an embrace. One is a woman, the other a young man whose throat was slit. On his chest carved runes spelling chosen. Around them, the belongings of a journey, weapons, jewelry, a carved phallus made of whalebone, and a bowl filled with what looks like dried semen and rose petals. You realize with a jolt, this wasn't a lover's tomb. It was a gate. The woman was a priestess, the man her vessel, and the ritual that brought them here was one meant to open the way between worlds. This wasn't uncommon. Many Viking tombs contain sexual relics, phallic charms, vaginal idols, paintings that depict penetration beneath stars. These weren't lewd. They were sacred. In their belief system, the universe itself was birthed from violent sexual union. The primal cow licking the first man from the ice. Giants mating with gods. The sun chased by wolves who hunger not for flesh, but for heat and life. To reenact this mythology and ritual was to keep the cosmos spinning. You begin to understand why so many Viking rituals terrified Christian chroniclers. Because they weren't just grotesque. They worked. They held meaning. They made people feel touched by something bigger, something wild, something ancient. While Christian rites preached restraint, Viking rites offered release. And release was power. Even now you feel it pulling at you. The seductive hum beneath the violence. The way fear and lust coil together. The smell of sweat-soaked pine and the echo of chants in languages forgotten. You're not sure if you want to flee or stay. You're not sure if you're watching a culture die or be reborn inside you. But you know this, the Vikings understood something we've tried to forget. That beneath every myth is a body, and every body yours included aches to be remembered. The scent of iron lingers on your tongue, like the aftermath of biting your own lip. It's not real blood, but the memory of it, of everything you've just seen, just felt trickling through your thoughts like a slow, dangerous tide. The burial mound behind you still pulses with silence. But ahead is the sea again. The ships have returned. They don't come back triumphant, not exactly. They return changed, quieter. Something about the ocean journey acts as a washing away of human skin, and what's left behind are myth-bearers, half men, half ghosts. Some wear garlands of bone. Others still carry the scent of women, the heat of combat. The bruises of ceremonies performed with neither permission nor refusal. They don't speak of what happened. They never do. Instead, they bring offerings to the village priestess. She stands tall outside the temple house, her arms inked with vines and beasts, her eyes smeared with soot to appear empty. She is neither young nor old, neither beautiful nor hideous. She is the veil, and what happens next is known as the Unbinding. You feel the shift in the air as the warriors kneel before her, heads bowed. One by one they approach and remove something intimate from their bodies, a blood-crusted ring, a torn braid from a captive's hair, a splintered figurine shaped like male flesh. They place these at her feet, not for memory, for erasure. Because these men must be reborn. What they did, what they endured, must now become myth. Not guilt, not shame, just story. The priestess takes a curved knife and slices her palm, letting blood fall over the offerings. Then she gathers a handful of ash and presses it into the wound. She whispers words no outsider can understand. But the effect is instant. The warriors rise changed, their eyes clearer, their shoulders squared. Their past deeds have become legend. Ritual sealed them. Memory released them. But not all are free. In a hut near the edge of the village, you hear crying, not weeping, animal-like sobs. Inside lies a boy no older than 15 who did not pass the trial. He was meant to ride the beast, a euphemism for a rite involving domination by older warriors masked as wolves. But he broke, screamed, fled, and now he is no longer considered a man. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. His fate lies with the volure now. She enters the hut trailing smoke and silence. No words, no judgment. Just a slow drawing of symbols on the boy's chest, one for pain, one for silence, one for what is to come. She straddles him, not sexually, but like a mountain swallowing a stone. She chants. She bites his ear until it bleeds. She spits into his mouth. And then she says, "Now you know." She leaves, and so does the boy. That's how they do it. No ceremony, no titles, just trauma marked and healed in the same act. And he will grow into a man the village fears, because those who fail the first time rarely do so again. When they return ruthless. Outside, another rite begins, this one softer, almost tender. A wedding. But not like yours. No flowers, no dancing. Just binding and silence. The bride is a captive, the groom a warrior who claimed her after the last raid. But she wears no chains. She walks barefoot, draped in red wool, her wrists wrapped in rawhide cords. She has not spoken since she arrived. She doesn't need to. Her silence is ritual. It means acceptance. The groom stands shirtless, his chest oiled and tattooed with runes of protection. He does not touch her. He doesn't even look at her. Instead, the priestess places a blade between them. They are told to bleed. Both nick their palms. Blood drips onto the blade. Then the priestess licks it clean. You are now husband and womb. That is the only vow spoken. Later that night, the consummation happens in public, not to arouse, to sanctify. As the couple lies beneath a woven shroud, the village gathers around, humming the slow, steady tone of the earth's first breath, low, constant, rhythmic. The sound drowns out the moans, the gasps, the pain, the pleasure, the transformation. It is not about love. It is about balance. The masculine and feminine made visible, violent, honest. You sit with it longer than you expect to. Even the animals are silent. In the days that follow, the village prepares for the feast of Thorablot, a sacred banquet to honor Thor, the god of thunder and carnal strength. But before the food, there must be the challenge. A night of trials, of games that test not skill, but submission. The first trial is simple. Two men wrestle blindfolded naked on a bed of pine needles soaked in fermented milk. The one who submits must kiss the other's groin in front of the crowd. Laughter, yes, but also respect, because the gods watch most closely when pride cracks. The next trial is darker. A woman painted in black ash stands in the middle of the ring. She has no name tonight. She is a vessel, a mirror. Men approach her one by one, telling their darkest secrets aloud before kneeling between her legs. She does not respond. But when the last one speaks, she slaps him hard across the face. Everyone gasps. That slap is the gods rejecting his offering. He must leave the feast in silence. He becomes a wanderer, a seeker, until the gods forgive him. You begin to understand that every moment in this culture is soaked in sexual tension, but not in the way you're used to. It's not about desire. It's about stakes. Every gesture, every touch, every refusal or invitation means something beyond the body. Because the body is just the first language. The gods speak through what comes after. You see a girl no more than 12 dance around the fire with two boys. Their limbs flash, their eyes bright. They are not performing for adults. They're performing for the past, for ancestors watching in the smoke. One boy slips and the girl catches him. She pulls him close and kisses his cheek. The crowd cheers. He has been chosen. They will be joined in spirit until the gods say otherwise. There is no shame in it, only prophecy. And finally you watch as the chieftain of the village, ancient gray but still sharp, enters the hall alone and undresses before the fire. No one speaks. He stands naked, arms raised, his body bearing every scar from every ritual he has endured. Then, with a curved bone dagger, he carves a new symbol into his chest, a spiral. He is claiming rebirth, not reincarnation, continuance. Because even the old must become new again. The flames dance across his skin. And in that flicker you understand. This world, this brutal, beautiful, terrifying world, isn't gone. It lives in whispers, in blood, in hunger. It lives in you. The fire crackles behind your eyes as you watch the chieftain press his fingers into the fresh spiral carved into his chest. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't grimace. He closes his eyes and breathes long and low like he's inhaling something deeper than smoke. Around him the villagers bow their heads. Even the children kneel. This isn't about dominance. Not now. This is about continuity, the belief that pain renews, that ritualized suffering binds not just man to God, but man to man, soul to soul, memory to myth. And that's what you begin to see more clearly now. In the Viking world, memory was erotic. It clung to the body like sweat. What was done to you, what you endured or inflicted, became part of who you were. That's why their rituals had to be so physical, so invasive, so unforgettable. The gods weren't satisfied with whispered prayers or silent devotion. They demanded you carry the story in your blood. You walk through the village the next day, watching the aftermath of the feast. Naked bodies lie scattered in the grass, limbs entwined, bruises visible on thighs, wrists, lips. Some sleep with arms around each other. Others alone, curled against the chill. There is no shame, no disgust. The rites were fulfilled, and their scars are now sacred. A group of young women emerges from the river water, cascading from their skin like molten silver. They laugh, splashing each other, but not with innocence. They've just completed what's called the 9 nights, a rite of seclusion, where they fast sleep in animal skins and take turns reciting the songs of Freyja by candlelight. But it's not just recitation, it's embodiment. Each verse must be performed with the body. Some require dance. Others demand more. One verse ends with the girl kissing the earth, then moaning a line while her feet are held above her head. It isn't erotic in the modern sense. It's symbolic. It represents Freyja's power to both open the ground for seed and open herself to receive divine pleasure. To the Vikings, the connection is obvious. Everything fertile is sacred. Everything sacred is dangerous. When the girls return, they are no longer considered daughters or sisters. They are priestesses in training. They've tasted the fire and were not burned. But the gods don't just visit in rites. They visit in dreams. You meet a man whose face you recognize, a warrior from the first raid, broad-shouldered, soft-eyed. He hasn't spoken since returning, not one word. Instead, he draws. His hut is filled with crude carvings on bone wood, even skin drawings of a winged woman, with a serpent's tongue of a wolf, with a man's hands of people joined in ways no anatomy would allow. They're not pornography. They're prophecy. He claims he was visited by a draugr, an undead creature who straddled him while he slept, and whispered in his ear until he climaxed. When he woke, the ground beneath him was wet, frozen, and carved with symbols he didn't recognize. The village believes him. They call him God-kissed. He is no longer allowed to fight. He's too close to the other side. Now he teaches young men how to open themselves to visions. And what's the method? Submission. They're instructed to lie on stone slabs coated in fish oil. They're blindfolded and held down not cruelly, but firmly. Then the volur whisper in their ears, telling them stories of gods mating in the clouds, of women who ride the wind with legs open wide, of men who weep during climax because the stars burn brighter when they do. It's not arousal they seek. It's surrender. Only when the body stops resisting can the spirit see clearly. You pass one boy afterward, trembling tears streaking his cheeks. He looks at you not with shame but with revelation. I saw her, he says. Her mouth was fire. Her eyes were salt. She asked me if I was ready to die. And you know somehow that he said yes. Back in the temple house, preparations begin for another rite. This one is rarer, whispered about in frightened tones. It's the hummingja ceremony, a rite to transfer one's sexual spirit to another, often before death or exile. The hummingja is believed to be the part of the soul responsible for luck, virility, and charisma, and it can be gifted, but only through physical transference. You watch as an elder woman, stooped but glowing, kneels before a younger warrior. She places her forehead against his chest. She breathes him in. Then she takes his hands and places them on her thighs. You must take what I can no longer carry, she whispers. He trembles, and slowly she guides him into her, not with lust, but with gravity. They do not move. They do not pant. They simply remain joined while the village chants. The moment lasts hours. When it ends, she collapses. He rises. Something in his eyes has changed. Later, he will lead a raid. He will not lose a single man. And every woman in the village will ask to sleep beside him, not for pleasure, but to catch echoes of the humming ja in his skin. Even children participate in echoes of these rites in gentler forms. There's a game they play called Claiming the Bride. A girl sits in the center blindfolded. The boys circle, whispering words, some sweet, some cruel. She must choose based on the voice alone. When she picks, the chosen boy kisses her forehead. If she flinches, the gods frown. If she smiles, the game ends in cheers. But if she cries, that means the gods have entered her dreams. She is marked. Later in life, she will either become a volur or be offered to a chieftain during his crowning rite. It's not romance. It's fate. The stories are endless. A woman whose tongue was cut out during a fertility ceremony so that she could speak only to the gods. A man who drank from a carved skull cup filled with semen, believing it would give him the strength of those he consumed. A child conceived during a thunderstorm, raised to believe he was the reincarnation of Thor's son, and allowed to sleep with warriors at age 11 to gather power. You recoil, and yet you remain. Because beneath the horror is something intoxicating: belief. The absolute certainty that what they did meant something, that nothing was random, that every bruise, every cry, every tremble echoed across time into myth. And maybe, just maybe, you feel a part of it now. Not because you approve, but because you understand. The Viking world wasn't a place of black and white. It was blood red and shadow. And you're still standing in the middle of it. You're sitting on a cliff now, overlooking the same waters that once carried dragon-proud ships toward distant, doomed shores. The wind brushes against your skin like a whisper that's not quite human. Behind you, the village breathes slow, steady, alive with secrets. You've seen what happens when belief and flesh entwine. But what's more chilling is what comes after. The quiet rituals, the ones no one talks about. The ones done not in firelight, but in shadows. The ones whispered, not sung. Because in Viking culture, some rites weren't about ecstasy or conquest. They were about control and punishment. You first hear of it in fragments. A girl who shamed the harvest. A boy who spoke wrongly in the night. These aren't just missteps. They are spiritual failures. Offenses not just against custom, but against the very structure of the cosmos. And they require correction. So you follow the sound of drums, not bold and warlike, but soft like heartbeat against stone. They lead you to a stone circle deep in the forest. Only women are present. Naked, painted. They stand around a young girl who trembles with something that looks like terror and awe mixed into one. The leader, an older woman with milky eyes, steps forward. She holds a bundle of nettles and whispers, "You refused your blood." The girl nods. This is about menstruation, but not biology. Spirit. In Viking lore, the first blood of a woman wasn't a thing to hide. It was sacred, celebrated. If you denied it, you denied the gods a sign that the world was renewing itself. And so this girl must atone. She's laid across a stone. Not tied, she doesn't resist. The women begin to strike her gently with the nettles, not to hurt, but to awaken, to sting the soul awake. Then one kneels and draws red ochre across her hips, mimicking the blood she rejected. She whispers a blessing. Then all together, they hum a note so deep it rattles your chest. When it ends, the girl rises. Her eyes are distant. She has been restored. Elsewhere, a young man is led blindfolded into a pit. It's shallow, filled with peat water bones. This is called the mire, a place of forgetting. He has been accused of coveting another man's wife before the gods had made their will known. Not adultery. Not yet. Just desire. But in this world, desire is a powerful force, one that must be acknowledged, confessed, and drained. The man kneels. A circle forms around him. They begin to chant, and one woman steps into the pit with him. She mounts him not for pleasure, but to press out the longing. The act is rhythmic, detached. The crowd counts aloud. At a certain number, 40, maybe more, she stops, climbs off, and spits into the bog. Let his lust sink. He remains in the pit until nightfall. No food, no words. When he emerges, he must walk backwards for 3 days, to retrace his mistake, to unmake it. You're stunned at how much the body is used this way, not just to express desire, but to punish it, cleanse it, reconfigure it. There is no separation between sin and skin, and that's what makes it all so inescapable. You cannot think wrongly without it showing on your body. You find this again in the rites for the widowed. When a husband dies in battle, his wife is not simply allowed to mourn. She must pass through his fire. That is the phrase. It begins with silence. She must not speak for 7 days. Then she is led to a hill at dawn and stripped naked. There, 3 men, her husband's shield brothers, approach one by one. Each must remind her of what she has lost, by touching her where he once did. Lips, neck, breasts, thighs. They do not sleep with her, not fully, but they come close. The point is not climax, it is memory. Then she is given a choice to remain widow or become freoduaf, a free woman. If she chooses the latter, she must sleep with one of the men under the light of the full moon. The gods will guide her choice, they say. Sometimes the man chosen dies within the year. They say it's because her grief was too strong to lift. It's not superstition, it's belief. And belief here is reality. You walk among the trees and find another ritual underway. This one involves children. A festival called Laker Blood, the Game of Blood. Boys and girls dress as gods, Thor, Freyja, Loki, and reenact tales of seduction, betrayal, transformation. They wear masks carved from birch, their voices high and sing-song. But the disturbing part, the stories are not softened. One boy pretends to pin a girl against a tree, mimicking Loki, stealing her voice. Another group dances naked around a carved phallus, pretending to be elves birthing storms from lust. They are 7, maybe 8. And yet no one stops them. Because here to know these stories is to carry the gods. The sexual violence of myth is not hidden. It is relived, ritualized, retold. In their world, to be innocent is to be useless. You pass a man teaching a young boy how to sharpen a blade. He stops, points to a mole on the boy's thigh. Freyja kissed you, he says. One day you will bed a priestess. The boy smiles. Not bashfully, proudly. Because in this village, being chosen sexually isn't taboo, it's divine. Even same-sex love has its place. 2 men lie together beneath a tree, hands twined, eyes closed. They were bonded during a war rite, forced to fight naked, then made to make peace with their bodies. What began in ceremony bloomed into something lasting. They live together now. They are not mocked. They are envied. It is said that when 2 men love one another without violence, Odin listens more closely. And yet, not all is gentle. You hear of a girl who loved too boldly. She lay with a chieftain's son before his naming ceremony. He was not yet a man, and she not yet a wife. This imbalance summoned Skogsro spirits of the woods, who punish such unions with infertility. To appease them, she must crawl through thorns until she bleeds, then offer her blood to the roots of an oak tree while chanting, "Take what I took before its time." You watch from afar as she does this. Her tears fall into the earth. Her skin is scratched raw, but she sings. She believes this will fix what was broken, and maybe it will, because here every action reverberates, every touch echoes, every scream, moan, shiver, it becomes part of the collective myth. And whether you recoil or lean in, it has already taken root in you. The stories won't leave. They never do. You're still haunted by the girl's chant, the way her voice trembled not from pain, but from reverence. You thought the rituals of the Vikings were only raw and savage, but now you see that beneath the blood and fire, beneath the bruises and broken skin, there is always meaning. The gods, after all, do not waste suffering, not in this world. As night falls again, the village begins to stir. A new rite approaches. This one, spoken of only in hushed tones, is called Kindilmessa, the festival of flame and flesh. It happens only once a year, on the darkest, moonless night, when even the wolves refuse to howl and the wind seems to hold its breath. It is said that this night is the closest the world comes to the space between realms, where spirits walk freely and the gods listen with mouths open. In preparation, every fire in the village is extinguished. No torches, no candles, no hearths, just blackness and breath. The air thickens with anticipation, and you're told tonight no one speaks their name. You are what the gods make of you. You're led like everyone else, blindfolded into the central hall. Inside, the air is dense with the scent of burnt sage, sweat, and musk. The floor is layered with furs. Naked bodies already wait, reclining cross-legged, anonymous. They wear masks, animalistic, crude, some carved to resemble twisted grins or eyeless voids. You're handed one too. You put it on. Suddenly, you are no longer yourself. You are a participant. The ritual begins with a sound, low, continuous humming, like the earth itself is groaning. A woman begins to crawl across the floor, her hips swaying with ritual rhythm. She touches a man's face, then moves on. Another man reaches out and pulls a body into his lap, not forcefully, but with ownership. No one speaks. No one calls out. Touch is the only language. The only rule: do not ask. Do not tell. This rite is not about who you are, it's about who you can become. They say Freyja and Loki walk among the masked tonight. Anyone could be a god. Anyone could be a spirit. You could be taken, and it might not be by a mortal at all. You may never know. You're meant not to know. You hear gasps in the dark. Moans, too. Some high-pitched and desperate, others low and primal. The room becomes a storm of heat and motion. Not violent, not brutal, just unrelenting. You feel a hand brush your thigh, a breath against your neck, a body pressing against yours, then moving on. There is no asking, no deciding, only becoming. For hours this continues. And when the chanting stops, when the air becomes still, the masked ones lie together on the furs like driftwood after a flood. Some cradle one another. Others lie staring into the dark. You sense tears among them, though you can't tell if they're from ecstasy, grief, or something older, something nameless. Come morning, no one speaks of what happened. That's part of the rite. What occurred in the dark stays there buried, sacred, unspeakable. But changes appear. A woman now walks with her shoulders straighter, her voice steadier. A man who stammered before now speaks with sudden clarity. A child is conceived that night, they say, one who will be born with strange colored eyes and speak riddles in his sleep. They call such children moon-blooded, touched by the divine. You leave the hall feeling changed. You don't know what was done to you or what you did, but your skin feels unfamiliar, tingling, like it remembers something your mind can't recall. That too is the gods' doing. Elsewhere, a different kind of ritual is taking place. You see two brothers in a field, stripped to the waist, holding spears. They are fighting not out of anger, but for inheritance. Their father is not yet dead, but he has declared that only the one who can win the goddess's favor may inherit his lands. But it's not just a duel of strength. After the spears are thrown and the blood is drawn, the final trial awaits the sharing. Each man must lie with the same woman, chosen by the volur, believed to be spiritually neutral, and bring her to climax. She will then declare who pleased her more, not in flesh, but in soul. It is believed that Freyja herself speaks through her, that she feels which man is richer in seed and shadow. You watch as the brothers prepare. One is cocky, the other nervous. The woman lies between them unafraid. She wears nothing but a necklace of boar tusks. She beckons the first. You turn away, but you hear everything. The breath, the sobs, the silence after. In the end, it's not the stronger brother who wins. It's the one who wept in her arms afterward. She claims she felt the sea in his sorrow, the truth of storms in his hips. The father nods. The land is his. You begin to see that in Viking belief it isn't always domination that wins favor. Sometimes vulnerability is more divine. Because the gods are not always warriors. Sometimes they are tricksters, lovers, widows, whores, and each of those roles is holy. Later that evening you pass a burial in progress. A woman has died not in battle but in childbirth. She is honored no less than a warrior. Her body is wrapped in linen, her womb stuffed with herbs and ash to purify it. Then something unexpected, a man, her husband, mounts her corpse gently. No thrusting, no movement. He simply lies atop her, kissing her mouth, her breasts, her belly. They call it the final bonding. They believe that if a man does this, he ties his fate to hers. When he dies, they will meet again, in Freya's field, naked and blooming. You feel your throat tighten. Not from revulsion, but from awe. Because this is how the Vikings face death, with a kiss, a moan, a final act of surrender. And in their world, nothing ends. Everything transforms. Grief becomes worship. Sex becomes memory. And memory becomes myth. As you drift away from the hilltop, the wind carries the scent of smoke and salt once more. Somewhere in the distance, a child is being born. Somewhere else, someone is being broken. Both are part of the same story. Both are sacred. Because in this world of fire and flesh, you do not live in spite of the gods. You live to feed them, and sometimes they feed on you. The rhythm of your heart now echoes that deep, ancient hum that always seems to rise just beneath the surface of this world. You can't tell if it's coming from the earth or from within yourself. The line is too blurred now. The boundaries have long dissolved between desire and duty, between violence and devotion, between you and them. The Viking way has seeped into your skin. You walk past the temple once more where a new rite is underway. This one is older than any you've seen before, so old that even the volur tread carefully. It's called Echo Vefr, the weaving of echoes. It's not held for warriors or priests or even the gods. It's held for those who cannot sleep, for those who are haunted. The afflicted sit in a circle, wrapped in wool cloaks, shivering, even though the air is warm. They are the sleepless, the dream-touched, the ones who cry out in the night with names not their own. You realize that trauma here is not a private matter. It is divine, and it must be woven into the fabric of the tribe or it will consume them all. A volur stands behind each person. One by one, they begin to whisper not to the afflicted, but as them. They take on their pain, mimicking their words, their moans, their screams, sometimes even their orgasms. They echo their torments. The afflicted listen, hearing themselves from outside their own bodies, and then finally they weep. This, they say, is how the echo leaves, through voice, through reflection, through ritualized exposure. You meet a boy who returned from his first raid shaking, barely able to speak. Not because of what he saw, but what he did. The others call him weak. The volur call him marked. They lay him on a fur mat, and 3 women press their bodies against his, not to arouse, but to ground him. Flesh to flesh, heartbeat to heartbeat. They wrap him in their heat and whisper the names of the gods until he stops trembling, until he begins to breathe in rhythm with them. When he opens his eyes, he smiles for the first time in days. They tell you that many warriors lose themselves in the act of killing, and to bring them back you must remind them they have bodies, that they are not just blades and fire but skin and breath and need. It is the oldest form of healing. to be held, to be touched, to be returned. But not all rituals are for healing. Some are for severing. You stumble into a grove where a girl, barely a woman, is kneeling in front of a stone slab. Her wrists are tied with flax rope, her chest bare, her thighs smeared with ash. A man stands behind her holding a double-bladed axe. But he is not the executioner. He is the witness. She has chosen this rite. Chosen. Brjóstskorin. The cutting away of love. It is performed only when someone wishes to remove the memory of another from their soul. A lover who died. A parent who betrayed. A child who was lost. The girl calls out a name once, twice, 3 times. Then she places her hand on the stone and begins to carve into her own breast. The blade is ceremonial dull, meant to drag, not slice. The wound will scar forever. That is the point. When the blood flows freely, the witness catches it in a wooden bowl and pours it into the roots of a tree. The memory is now buried, and in its place the gods may plant something new. Elsewhere, a warrior prepares for his final journey, not to war, but to death. He is not ill, not wounded, simply old. And in Viking culture, death should be faced with dignity, not decay. So he chooses the rite of leafbrot, the breaking. His family gathers, his wives, his sons, his daughters. They dress him in blue, the color of the sky, and oil his skin with pine resin and honey. Then they bind his arms and legs not tightly, but symbolically. They are saying goodbye to his strength. And then the women take turns lying beside him, not to pleasure him, but to hold his memories. Each one whispers something into his mouth, a confession, a regret, a longing he never fulfilled. They kiss him gently, brush his hair back, and sing the song of his name, his real name, the one only known to the gods. When they are done, he walks alone to the cliff where the sea waits, and he jumps. No pyre, no sword, no battle cry, just silence. Because sometimes the most sacred offering is a death without violence. You find yourself walking the shoreline later alone, trying to make sense of all of this. The rituals, the bodies, the endless blur of pain and ecstasy. And then you see them. Children. 2 girls, maybe 10 years old, standing waist-deep in the sea, cupping water in their hands and letting it spill onto each other's heads. They're giggling, but when they spot you, they fall silent and bow. You didn't realize. They were performing a rite. Vatns modir, Water Mother, a cleansing ritual for girls before their first blood. They're told the sea is their mother, and that every drop they spill honors her. That their bodies will one day do what the sea does, receive, hold, release. It's beautiful. It's horrifying. It's sacred. And it leaves you hollow in the best possible way. That night, the stars seem closer. The wind carries voices, not speech, but cadence, like the lingering breath of a chant long since faded. You realize the Vikings didn't fear sex. They didn't fear pain. What they feared was meaninglessness, a life unlived, a body untouched, a death unmarked. And so they marked everything, with blood, with semen, with song. They carved truth into skin, spilled memory into soil, and danced naked under stars, not for rebellion, but for remembrance. And now their stories live in you, whether you asked for them or not. You sit beneath a tree whose roots twist like veins, and above you stars scatter like shattered teeth across the black sky. You've seen so much. too much. But it keeps pulling you deeper this world, where the sacred bleeds through every kiss, every blade, every shiver of skin. You're not sure where the line is anymore, between you and them, between witness and participant. And tonight, that line disappears completely. The villagers are preparing for a rite called Skjotajarta, the quickening of the heart. It's whispered to be the most dangerous ritual of all, not because of violence, but because it calls the gods directly into the body. They say if you're not strong enough to endure it, your soul can crack, your heart can stop, or worse, the god may stay. It begins in absolute silence. No fire, no light, no words, just breath. You're led into a longhouse so dark it feels like you're underwater. The air is heavy with damp fur, crushed berries, and something smoky, almost sweet. You sit among the others. All are naked. Not in a sexual way, but in a raw, stripped way, like truth peeled skin from the bone. A voice finally breaks the stillness. Low, feminine, piercing. She is the Kvold Modir, the Night Mother, a priestess of shadows. Her body is painted with ash and bone dust. Her eyes roll back as she chants, not to the gods you've heard before, but to something older, something colder. She calls upon Skoft, a spirit said to dwell between love and violence. The villagers answer by touching one another slowly, uncertainly at first. A hand on a shoulder, a brush of thigh, a mouth against a navel. Not lust, not tenderness, just presence. The Kvold Modir approaches you. She kneels in front of you and places her hands on your chest. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Her fingers press down slow and firm until you feel like your ribs might crack. Then she leans in and kisses your sternum. The world disappears. What comes next is impossible to explain. You feel everything. The first time you cried as a child. The first time you ached for someone who didn't look back. The first time you touched someone in darkness and wondered if they saw your soul. All of it crashes through you in a rush of heat and breath. You are shaking. You are sobbing. And then you are still. When the rite ends, the villagers begin to hum again, this time not in rhythm, but in harmony. A rising chorus of voices that sound like mourning and celebration braided together. The Kvold Modir lays down in the center of the room. She is not breathing. No one moves to help her, because this is her offering. The priestess gives her body in full so the gods may taste the pain of those she touched. By morning she'll either rise reborn or not at all. No one speaks of it. You step into the sunlight dazed and your body feels foreign, like it belongs to a different version of you. One that finally saw what belief looks like when there are no boundaries. When you don't just think the gods are watching, but feel them inside you pulling the strings of your flesh. Later that day, you observe a rite that seems almost mundane by comparison. But it isn't. It's a naming. A newborn boy is placed at the center of a stone circle, naked, crying. His mother sits nearby, bleeding still from the birth, her legs trembling. She holds nothing. She watches. A warrior one, not her mate, steps forward. He cradles the child. Then, in full view of the crowd, he licks the blood from the child's umbilical stump. He says, "He is mine now," but not in the paternal sense. This is a spiritual adoption. The warrior offers his own sexual energy, his bloodlust, his fate, and in return, he takes the boy's name into his own soul. If the child lives, the warrior will grow stronger. If the child dies, the warrior will weaken. Their fates are now entwined. The baby is kissed by every member of the village, not on the forehead, but on the lips. Even children, even strangers. It is believed the breath of others will grant him strength. You find it overwhelming, intimate, terrifying, and yet beautiful. This culture doesn't separate life into tidy categories. Sex is not over there and death over here. Love is not gentle and war is not cold. Everything mixes, everything fuses, and every rite is a reminder that the body is where all truths begin. You follow a young woman into the woods that night. She is quiet, pale. Her belly is swollen. She carries herbs and a small bone knife. She is not ready to give birth. She is ready to abort. This is a secret rite. They call it Hugbrot soul breaking. It is not shameful. She kneels in a bed of moss. Another woman joins her. No chants, no songs, just breath and the careful slicing of roots. The girl drinks the bitter brew and waits. When the pain starts, she lies back and opens herself to the night sky. She whispers a name one she'd given the unborn child and offers it to the stars. Not in sorrow, but as a gift. This soul was not meant for here, she says. I return it. The next day she will be celebrated, not shamed, because she had the strength to choose, and choice in this world is holy. You begin to feel something stir in your chest. Not desire, not fear, respect. Because these people have built a world where nothing is meaningless. Not touch, not loss, not even suffering. They've taken the terrifying and made it sacred. And now, they've taken you too. You don't remember falling asleep, but when you wake, the world smells different. The air tastes of smoke, honey, and something metallic beneath it. The trees sway slower than usual, like they're listening. The village is quiet, but not dead, just bracing. Something is coming. You feel it deep in your bones, and then you hear it. The horns. Not the war horns of raiding ships, but a deeper, more mournful tone, long, low, echoing through the valley. It's a summons, not for celebration, not for sacrifice, but for Vapndraugardagur, the day of the weapon ghosts. It's the day when those who died in battle return, not in body, but in story, in flesh, in act. The village reenacts their deaths not through retellings, but through carnal mimicry. They believe that through these intimate acts the fallen can find peace or power, depending on who performs them. You walk toward the sacred clearing where the rites will take place. Already the participants are preparing. They've painted their bodies with streaks of ash and pig's blood, drawn runes over their nipples and thighs, smeared mud into their hair. Each one wears a mask, carved to resemble the face of a dead warrior. The bodies they will engage with have also been selected living stand-ins who offer themselves willingly. They lie on the ground, arms stretched, legs parted, not resisting, not inviting, simply ready. One by one, the masked ones approach, kneel, and begin to reenact the deaths of the fallen, not by sword or fire, but through pleasure, through symbolic acts of domination and surrender. Some move violently, others gently, but all follow the same rhythm, a slow, deliberate pulse guided by drumbeats in the trees. Every groan, every gasp, every whimper is believed to feed the memory of the fallen. You witness one pairing where the masked warrior places his hand on the woman's throat, not choking, just resting, and she weeps uncontrollably. Later she will say she saw her brother's face, that he forgave her, that he kissed her forehead, in the moment she climaxed. No one questions it, because in this rite the body is the bridge between life and death, and sometimes the dead speak clearest through flesh. Later another rite begins quieter but no less intense. It's called Quidsecha, the sitting of the womb, a ritual for women who fear they cannot conceive. The voleur selects one and leads her to a sacred mound. There she is laid atop a stone slab, legs parted beneath the sky belly rubbed with nettles and sheep's milk. But the rite isn't solitary. A man, never her mate, is chosen to lie with her. They do not speak. They do not look at each other. They simply move, slow, rhythmic, ancient. The belief is that the gods need strangers to ignite the womb, that too much love stifles creation, that lust born of ritual, not romance, calls the stronger spirit down. Afterward, the woman remains on the slab until moonrise. If she dreams of water, it is said the womb has opened. If she dreams of fire, she must wait another year. And if she dreams of wolves, then she is already pregnant with a child, fated to be wild, dangerous, and blessed. You step away dazed, and then by the river you find a ceremony unfolding that feels almost soft. It's called Quickening, the double-knotted, a joining of two souls who will never marry. Lovers bound not by duty, but by fate. They kneel across from each other, their hands bound by a silken cord. Between them lies a single knife. They must each choose a part of their body to cut one cut only, and then press their wounds together. He chooses the inside of his thigh. She chooses the curve beneath her breast. They bleed into each other's skin. Then, as night falls, they lie together, not to consummate, but to commune. No motion, no climax, just presence. They lie entwined until morning, when the voleur declares whether the gods have accepted the bond. If dew appears on their skin, the gods approve. If not, they are unbound and must never touch again. You hear their breathing. You feel their ache. And you understand that this world doesn't always take. Sometimes it offers, but only if you're willing to bleed for it. That evening, the chieftain's daughter undergoes her drotnarlot, her rite of queenship. She is not becoming ruler. She is becoming the womb of the hall, the woman who will preside over births, deaths, weddings, bindings, and unbindings. She will not fight. She will not command. But her body will become sacred space. The rite begins at dusk. She stands atop a mound, arms bare chest painted with blue spirals. One by one, the village men walk past her and place 2 fingers on her womb. Not sexually, symbolically. Each man is giving her his stories, his dead, his hopes. When the last one passes, the women gather around her and chant, "You will carry the sorrow of the hall. You will burn for others and never be consumed. You are the river and we will drink." Then one woman steps forward with a bowl filled with blood and semen collected from prior rites. The queen-to-be drinks it without hesitation. Her mouth does not tremble, and the village bows. She is now more than daughter. She is hall mother. That night she sleeps in the middle of the longhouse, surrounded by naked bodies. Not to pleasure, not to dominate, simply to absorb. She is the keeper now, the silent witness, the one who will remember. And in the morning she will wake alone, because that too is part of the rite, to carry the weight of others in silence. You realize you've come to a place beyond words, beyond categories, where everything is touched by the erotic, but nothing is just erotic, where every body is sacred, but none are safe. where the soul can only be reached through wounds and the gods only answer when you tremble. This is no longer a story you're watching. It's a story you're inside, and it will not let you go. You're not walking anymore. You're drifting, as if the ground beneath your feet has surrendered to something deeper, something softer, yet more consuming. You don't know if you're still on land or in memory. The Viking world has swallowed you whole, and you're not even trying to claw your way back. Why would you? Every breath here is steeped in meaning. Every moan is a prayer. Every scar a scripture. It's near dawn now, and a thin mist curls around the village like a waiting spirit. Today is Blodfjall, the day of the blooded mountain. A rite of fertility, yes, but also of ownership. Not between man and woman, but between land and flesh. They believe the soil must be fed not just with death, but with the living, pulsing heat of life. It begins with a climb. 7 women and 7 men, all of age but unwed, trek up the side of a sacred hill that looms behind the village like the humped back of a slumbering god. They wear nothing but ash markings and long ropes braided from hair. No one speaks on the way up. They are not allowed to. Their silence is the offering. Words would soil it. At the summit, the ritual ground awaits. A wide, flat stone with grooves carved into its surface to catch the blood. Around it, the bones of animals, fragments of pottery, old tools buried halfway in the earth. Generations have stood here. Generations have bled here. The volur waits at the center. She greets each participant with a kiss to the mouth and a slap to the cheek, soft or hard, depending on what she sees in their eyes. She then chooses pairs. These couples do not know each other. That is deliberate. Love must not interfere. Lust must not dictate. It is the gods who choose through the volur's hand. Once paired, they are led to different corners of the mountaintop. They are given a single task, to awaken the earth through their joining. It must be honest. It must be raw. It must include pain. This is not a gentle rite. There is biting, scraping, the press of bodies against cold stone, and blood drawn from thighs, from chests, from the back of the neck, where the soul is believed to rest. Each pair, once finished, must cry out in unison. Not from climax, from contact. A cry loud enough to wake the gods. You watch a woman sob while a man cradles her, their bodies still shaking from the act. Not with shame, with awe. She kisses his cheek, whispers something, then crawls to the center stone and presses her forehead to its surface. The volur marks her womb with goat's blood. She may conceive tonight, or she may become barren forever. That is not for them to know. That is the gods' decision. The men descend first, covered in streaks of ash and red. They walk silently into the river and submerge themselves one by one. Their bodies steam. They do not shiver. They accept the chill like penance. The women remain longer. They are wrapped in wool and led in a slow procession back to the village where each will sleep alone in a separate hut until the moon is full again. No one will speak to them. They are now Hulan veiled. They carry something inside, whether life or something darker, no one knows yet. You're told that in the weeks following Blodfjall, the village sees an increase in dreams. Strange ones. Wet ones. Terrifying ones. Dreams where the dreamer wakes with claw marks on their chest, or blood between their legs, or teeth in their mouth that don't belong to them. They say this is the earth responding, breathing, accepting. And now the air shifts again. A different rite begins in the longhouse. It is the Svik Narhoof, the hood of betrayal, a ritual reserved for those who broke vows, promises of fidelity, loyalty, silence. But unlike punishments, you know this one is not about pain. It is about revelation. The guilty are brought forth hooded nude. They kneel before the tribe. One by one, those they betrayed step forward, not to strike, but to touch. Each touch must be intimate. A caress of the inner thigh, a kiss behind the ear, a hand pressed between shoulder blades. These aren't meant to shame. They are meant to expose the depth of what was broken. And then the hood is removed. The accused must now meet every gaze, naked, touched, known. Then comes the final act. They are given a choice to accept the sviksar, the cut of reconciliation or exile. If they choose the cut, a volur draws a thin blade down the inside of their arm. Blood flows into a bowl filled with semen milk and ash. The mixture is poured onto the roots of the hall's central post. It is said this wood absorbs betrayal and transforms it into protection. If they choose exile, they are stripped of their name and sent into the wild wearing only a necklace of bones to warn others of what they carry. Tonight, a woman chooses the cut. She does not flinch. And when the blood touches the wood, the whole house sighs as if the gods themselves exhale through its beams. As dawn approaches, a different rite unfurls in a shadowed hut behind the main hall. You hear it before you see it, gasping, keening breath, catching in throats like ropes slipping from beams. It's the Lekenblod, the mercy blood rite. It's for those who can no longer carry what they've seen. Warriors broken by visions. Midwives who birthed stillborns. Wives who carried but never cradled. It is not healing. It is release. The body is bled slowly, small cuts along the ribs, hips, inner arms, places where sorrow hides. As the blood seeps out, others gather around and press their mouths to the wounds, drinking the grief in silence. No one cries. They honor the pain by consuming it. And when the bleeding stops, the person is anointed with oil and left to sleep on a bed of moss, their breath rising slow and shallow. If they dream, the gods will guide them back. If not, they are buried in the forest face down, so their sorrows don't return to the village. This is the cost of knowing, of carrying, of being a vessel in a world that demands meaning in everything. And as you lie under the trees once more, you feel the burden too, but also the beauty. Because here, even despair is sacred. Even madness has a ritual. Even your trembling, watching heart is part of the myth. The moss beneath your back cradles you like a second skin. You stare up through the trees, and the sky is beginning to shift, indigo fading to bruised lavender, the light of dawn just touching the edges of the world. But the darkness isn't done with you yet. Not here. Not in this place where ritual never sleeps, where the line between sex and spirit blurs so completely you can't remember what it was like to feel untouched. This morning marks the Vetervaka, the awakening of spirits. It's not a celebration, it's a reckoning. The Vikings believed that certain sexual acts, particularly those involving domination, pain, or death, leave behind a residue. A spirit that does not rise to the afterlife but clings to the soil, the walls, the skin of the living. These are not ghosts in the way you imagine. They're not the dead. They're the witnesses. And once a year, they must be awakened and acknowledged, or else they'll begin to speak in less subtle ways: sickness, madness, infertility. It starts with a procession, not of people but of memories. Villagers gather in the longhouse, each bringing a symbol of a moment they've never confessed. A broken necklace, a torn undergarment, a strip of bark with blood still staining the grain. They don't speak. They simply place the objects at the feet of the Veterkona, a woman whose job is to embody the spirit of all unspoken things. She is covered in black cloth from head to toe. She doesn't speak either. Instead, she is touched. One by one, villagers come forward and press their hands to her chest, her belly, her groin. They don't grope. They don't linger. But each touch is a silent admission. This happened. I remember. I carry it. When everyone has given their offering, she is led to the sacred pool, a place fed by underground springs. There she is, stripped and washed, not with water alone, but with a mixture of milk, semen, and honey. The villagers pour it over her skin, chanting in a low, vibrating hum that seems to rise from the stones themselves. This is the baptism of memory, and it must be witnessed. Once clean, the Veterkona lies on a stone slab, and 3 men are chosen at random to lie with her. 1 for grief, 1 for rage, 1 for silence. They don't move quickly. They don't speak. They don't climax. They simply enter her, hold her, and weep. Each one carries the weight of the village into her body and through her into the gods. When the rite ends, she is carried away. No one looks her in the eye for a full year. She is not a person now. She is a vessel of echoes, and echoes are not to be touched. Later in the day, the children begin their own rite, like fading, the play of birth. They mimic what they see, what they hear, what they know, but cannot yet name. Girls fill their bellies with mud and tie vines around their waists, pretending to labor. Boys paint their faces with charcoal and wear furs, acting as midwives and warriors. They sing songs that blend lullabies with moans. One child, no older than 6, lies on his back and says, "I am Freyr. Come fill me." The others laugh. But the volur watches with solemn eyes. She writes his name down in bone dust. He will be tested when he turns 12, because the gods speak clearest through those who don't yet know shame. As evening approaches, the hall prepares for a lesser-known rite. One not found in sagas, but passed through generations in whispers. Hudmini skin memory, a ritual for elders who can no longer perform but still feel the fire inside. An old man lies naked on a bear pelt. He is frail. His hands shake. He hasn't spoken in days. Around him, 5 young villagers, men and women, gather. They kneel and begin to touch him slowly, gently tracing the lines of his skin like reading a sacred text. They do not arouse him. They remember him. Each touch is a chapter. Each kiss a footnote. They murmur the names of his wives, the number of his kills, the day he lost his first son. They chant the rhythms of his life into his body, so that when he dies, his flesh will carry the full story. By the end, he is weeping, not from pain, but from being known. And isn't that what all of this is about? Not sex, not domination, not even worship, but the ache of being seen fully for even one moment in a lifetime of silence. And the Vikings understood this. They wove it into every rite, even the final one you see today. It is called munfeda, the feeding of the mouth, a ritual for lovers who cannot have each other, forbidden by family, separated by status, torn apart by war. They sit across from each other, naked, starving. A single bowl of food is placed between them, honey, barley, a little blood. They must feed each other without using their hands, only mouths. And as they do, they speak the truths they never could. I dream of your back. I want to die inside your silence. I would have given you my name. They kiss between bites. They bite between words. When the bowl is empty, they are led apart. They will never see each other again. But their mouths will remember. Their tongues now carry memory the way stone carries weather. And the gods who feed on confession are sated once more. You leave the hall reeling, saturated. The weight of these stories presses against your chest, your throat, your thighs. Every part of you remembers something now, even if it didn't happen to you, even if it wasn't your body. Because that's how these rites work. They enter you, and they don't leave. You find yourself stumbling down a slope toward the river, feet raw, lips chapped, but your body humming with something ancient, something you were never taught, but now deeply know. The Vikings didn't build cathedrals. They built rites, each one etched into flesh, whispered into bone, and echoed in the trembling breath after a scream. And tonight, the final veil lifts. The most feared and revered ritual is about to begin. Filgugjöf, the gift of the guardian spirit. This rite is not done often. Only when the village faces something massive, famine, plague, invasion, or when a child is born under 2 moons. Tonight, both signs have arrived. The river has dried in places, and a child was born last night, with pupils shaped like runes. To save the village, someone must offer themselves not as sacrifice, but as vessel. The ceremony is held in a stone chamber beneath the temple. You crawl inside, ducking your head under the low arch. The air is thick with mildew sweat and the copper scent of blood long dried. Candles flicker along the walls, and at the center lies the chosen one. She's young, 17 maybe, naked. Her body is painted with winding black lines that look like vines, but are actually ancient runes, each one spelling her lineage, her fears, her longing. The volur moves slowly around her, chanting, grinding herbs into paste. But this time no others will touch her. Only one. A man steps forward. Not young, not old. His face is painted with animal fat. His eyes are wild. He is the Filgjumodir, the one who carries the spirit into her. He's not her lover. He's not her husband. He is the key. He kneels between her legs and the entire room begins to hum, not with music, but with breath. Everyone breathes together, inhaling and exhaling in rhythm, the pulse of the rite. Then he enters her, and something begins. It's not sex, not in any way you understand it. It's transformation. He's not giving her pleasure. He's giving her presence. A spirit moves through him, through her. Their bodies become conduits, shaking, arching, whispering sounds not meant for mortal ears. She gasps words that don't exist. He growls in tones older than language. And then, stillness. She reaches up, places her palm against his heart, and says, I see her. Everyone exhales at once. The spirit has taken root. She is now Filgjubar, the bearer of the village's future. Her dreams will guide planting, hunting, healing. Her body will no longer belong to her, but to the gods. And should she ever lie with another man again, the gods will abandon them all. She accepts this, smiles, because being chosen is worth everything. Afterward, she is wrapped in white linen and carried through the village on a litter. No one touches her. No one speaks her name. She is now sacred, not because she bled, not because she was penetrated, but because she received. That is power here, the power to receive and remain standing. You linger near the temple, breath unsteady limbs trembling with the weight of what you've just seen. And yet, it's not over. It never is. Another rite begins at the hearth. A child is dying. Too weak. Too soon. The parents are silent. Grief is not voiced aloud, it must be enacted. So they perform enduring the refeeding. The mother removes her clothes, holds the baby to her chest, and sings. Not a lullaby. A chant of her own birth. Of the pain her mother endured. Of the blood on the floor and the heat between her legs. Her voice cracks, but she never stops. The father takes a small knife and pricks his finger. He draws a rune on the baby's chest, the rune for survival. Then in silence he kneels before the voleur and asks permission. She nods, and he passes his seed into a bowl, not a body. It is mixed with milk and placed on the baby's lips. This is the last attempt, to feed the soul. If the child drinks, they will live. If not, they will be buried in salt and given back to the sea. Tonight, the baby drinks, and a new story begins. Later, when the stars return, the entire village gathers for Drogardans, the dance of the dead. Not a mourning rite, a celebration. They wear the clothes of the deceased wives in the cloaks of fallen husbands, sons in the war helms of slain fathers. They dance by firelight, laughing, moaning sometimes, even coupling under the open sky in mock remembrance. To the Vikings, grief without flesh is hollow. You're pulled into the dance. Someone places a fur around your shoulders. Another touches your chest and whispers a name you don't know. They tell you who you're dancing for now, and suddenly your feet know what to do. You are not yourself anymore. You are memory in motion. Breath turned to ritual. The dance goes on until someone screams, not from fear, but from ecstasy so pure it borders on pain. This is the signal. The gods have danced with them long enough. The fire is extinguished, and silence returns. Only now it's not empty. It's full. Because everything here has meaning. Everything here is body and myth. And now so are you. The village sleeps, but the land doesn't. You feel it beneath the soil, in the trees, in the breath of the sleeping bodies tangled beside dying embers. You've spent what feels like years inside this world, where desire and death are ritual twins. And now, as the final rite of the season begins, you understand why the Vikings feared no god but their own. Tonight is Kropsskrift, the body writing, a closing rite, a sealing. Everything that has happened, the lust, the pain, the ecstasy, the blood, it must now be carved into the flesh, not as punishment, as memory, as contract. The entire village gathers in the temple longhouse, naked, silent, waiting. The fire is small tonight, and the voleur carries a box filled with blades and bone ink. No names are called. Instead, you go forward when your body tells you it's time. You offer yourself. That's how it's always been. You watch as the first woman kneels, her back bare. The voleur bends low and whispers something that makes the woman's eyes fill with tears, not sadness, not fear, recognition. Then she begins to carve. The blade is obsidian. It doesn't slice, it scrapes. Slow, deliberate. Each cut forms a rune, but not just letters, experiences. One for the night she bled under the stars to summon rain. One for the time her womb failed to hold life and she buried her grief in the snow. One for the dream she had of Freyja kissing her on the lips and turning into flame. This is her scripture, written not in books, but on the skin. You realize that no one here believes the body is separate from the soul. They are the same material, the same parchment. Everything that matters must be written into it, because someday, when the bones are dust, the story must remain somewhere. So they write it into flesh. You see lovers receive matching marks on their hips, thighs, forearms, symbols that mean storm sacrifice chosen. You see widows request runes across their hearts. You see warriors cry out not in pain, but in release as the volure cuts through the scars of old battles to inscribe new meaning on top. Then, without being told, you rise. You don't know what the volure sees in you, but she nods as if she's been waiting. You kneel. The blade touches your spine, and she carves. It hurts. But not how you feared. It's not tearing. It's remembering. You feel each cut like a bell tolling inside you, each one calling out something. You've seen something. You've felt something you didn't know you carried. The girl on the stone, the blindfolded boy, the dancer who whispered love through mouthfuls of barley, the woman who drank blood and smiled as the gods entered her. When it's done, she kisses the wound. And for the first time, you understand why they do all of this. Why they make love beneath moons. Why they bleed in silence. Why they bind, bite, chant, scream. They do it because the body is the only altar that never burns down. The only temple no god can destroy. You lie down among them now, scarred and sacred. The rites are finished. But you are not. You will leave here changed. You will carry their stories. You will wake in your own bed far from stone circles and sacred groves and still feel the cuts singing beneath your skin. And maybe, just maybe, you'll remember what it means to touch, to ache, to tremble not in shame but in meaning. And if you listen closely enough, you'll hear the gods breathing through you, just like they always have. So now, as you lie still beneath your blankets, body, warm breath, soft eyes, heavy with sleep, let the echoes of their world drift gently to the edges of your mind. You've journeyed through a culture unlike any other, a world where the sacred lived in scars, where the body was never just flesh, but story, sacrifice, and sanctuary. Let go of the blood now. Let go of the cries. Let go of the hunger and the heat. Let the chill of the fjords fade and the weight of their rituals dissolve into mist. You're not on that wind-swept mountain anymore. You're here. Safe. Held. Feel your muscles loosen one by one. From your jaw to your shoulders. From your chest to your belly. Let each breath slow just a little more. You don't need to carry their gods any longer. Not tonight. The rites are done. The fire has died down. And whatever lingers now is only peace. Let the silence settle. Let your heartbeat soften. Let the darkness wrap around you like the softest wool. There are no more chants, no more blades. Just the steady rhythm of your breath and the distant hush of waves that aren't real. If you still feel the marks, that's okay. They're only dreams now. Just dreams. And you are free to sleep.